So let's take a minute and talk about empathy. It should be used anytime a caller has had a bad experience with your company, even if they're not angry. Now, empathy is not sympathy. It's simply expressing that you recognize the inconvenience of a situation and relate to how it affected your customer. Expressing empathy usually requires an apology as well. And by the way, it's not easy for all of us to just feel or even express empathy. It's something that maybe is going to sound practiced or scripted for you at first until you get more used to it. But this is where it's important, especially on angry callers, not to sound scripted when expressing empathy. Here's an example. Mr. Smith, I apologize for your experience and I'm truly sorry that this has happened. You want to say that in a more conversational manner. I apologize for your experience and I'm truly sorry that it happened can easily come across as being impersonal if you don't say it correctly. If you are a person that easily feels and shows empathy, then you're going to have an easier time with these callers and be more patient with them. Here's an example of an empathy phrase. Mr. Smith, I can see how that would be confusing. So let me help clear this up for you. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about is stress. And I want to say, first of all, that it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just bad when it's unmanaged. Preparation is the best defense of stress. And preparing yourself that there will be angry callers, sometimes on a daily basis, and having a plan to handle these calls will help you manage the stress that these calls will try to produce. It's like the 80-20 rule. 80% of your calls will be okay, but 20% of your calls will require more of you. So set your expectations accordingly and take care of yourself. Learn to recognize stress and find ways to decompress and not let it build up. Now let's take this up a notch. There's angry callers and then there's abusive callers. A caller can be angry without being abusive. An abusive caller is one who uses obscenities, harasses you, exhibits explosive anger, or attacks you personally. This type of caller will not be satisfied until they get you upset as well. It is especially important to express empathy, but remain neutral in order to control your emotions. Their abusive behavior can easily trigger a negative response from you, and they're waiting for that to happen. They are usually this angry because that is their personality and way of dealing with situations, or because they just don't believe that you can properly help them. They feel victimized, and they don't know how you're going to make them feel any better. It's possible they have had multiple negative situations with your company. You only have a slight chance of turning this caller into a positive or at least a neutralized result. So here's your strategy. You want to acknowledge that the caller's upset, express empathy genuinely, and direct the conversation toward a resolution. Do what you know to do, but when you realize there's no satisfying this customer, maybe after you've already resolved their issue, then it's time to exit the call with a closing, especially for this situation. Your company should have specific policies in place for handling abusive callers and should supply you with this information. You might want to respond with something such as this. Mr. Customer, I've done all I know to do to resolve your issue, and I truly apologize that this has happened, but I cannot help you any further. I'm sorry you're so angry, but I need to attend to other customers and must end this call. Thank you for your business, and I hope your day gets better. It sounds a little trite, but sometimes you just can't get off the phone or stop it, and you don't want to just hang up. So if the abusive behavior continues, let the caller know that you will not continue the conversation unless it stops. If the abusive caller does not stop, place them on hold or have your supervisor take over, or do simple closing as I just suggested. Now, it's important after a call with a really rude customer to, number one, take care of you. It's also good to talk to your supervisor about the call before someone else does. Let's discuss for a minute the call notes after a negative call. It is important for future positive experiences for that customer with your company that negative notes are not necessarily placed in their call file unless it's highly necessary, such as an abusive caller. This will instantly put the next CSR on guard when dealing with this customer when maybe the customer has a very calm demeanor. But it can then trigger the CSR's defensiveness as well as the customer's, which can again create another negative experience for the customer. You want each call to be another opportunity to satisfy the customer. Remember, it's about them, not about you. Some organizations allow a statement to be written such as this: customer's behavior was rude and obnoxious. However, I wouldn't necessarily suggest that and write this instead. If it was an abusive caller, that's one thing. But if the customer just was a little angry, you can write this: customer had a negative experience and was unhappy and spoke abusive. Situation was resolved. Now, you may not need to add the part spoke abusive unless it actually applied. I just try to give the caller the benefit of the doubt. And then when it starts to happen repeatedly, that's something that you're going to have to handle on a supervisor level. So it's good not to instantly give up on these callers is my point, but to attempt to work with them in the future as a long-term customer. It's good to give people the benefit of the doubt as you don't always know the other situations surrounding their life. However, just like on an airplane, when the oxygen mask comes down, you have to put yours on before you put your child's masks on. So when you are dealing with these situations that really get escalated, you want to make sure that you are taking care of yourself and making sure that this doesn't happen further in the future with this customer. Now, dealing with challenging scenarios is another type of call I want to address. Not all difficult calls involve angry or abusive customers. Challenging calls often involve one of these three sources as well. The situation may be challenging, your environment or the caller's environment, or the caller itself. Now, these situational challenges most often occur because you are under pressure and you can't find the answers. All of these situations can be overcome. When under pressure, take deep breaths and focus on one call at a time and on one step of the solution at a time. When you can't find the answers, stay in touch with your customer. Let them know that you're working on a solution. If you are still stumped, don't hesitate to get your supervisor or another coworker involved. Once again, I'll mention that if you ask permission to place them on hold or continue to place them on hold and give them frequent updates, they're going to appreciate that you're at least working on the problem. Never leave them on hold for more than a minute. Your company may, again, have quality control policy for hold times.